All right, we're going to get started. And so welcome everybody to my first YouTube live stream, where it's just me in front of all of you. I'm Ray Sidney Smith, and I am the president of W3 Consulting and the managing director of W3C Web Services. And so we do digital marketing, counseling, training, and other services, basically through the small business development centers throughout the United States. So if you've come to any of my workshops or seminars, you've probably met me, and so hi, how's it going? And then we also have a web hosting, domain registration, and other web services on, which is W3C Web Services. So a little bit about me, and I am one of the Data Privacy Day champions for January 28th, 2020. And so the National Cybersecurity Alliance is hosting a whole series of live stream talks, and I am doing this live stream Q&A with you all today so that we can just answer any questions that you might have about data privacy. And so I'm going to just go over a couple of pointers, just things that I think that in at least a small business context, we all need to consider. And a lot of this can relate to individuals personally. I apologize a little bit about the sound quality today. I'm in a location where I didn't plan to record, so might be a little bit of echoiness, but hopefully you can hear me, and just let me know in the chat if for some reason you can't, and I'll be happy to repeat myself or try to type it into the dashboard here. If you have any questions, the whole reason I'm here is to answer those questions. So go ahead and type those into the question chat, the live chat box there on the page, and I'll be happy to answer those questions as well as we make our way through the time together. So we'll probably spend about 10 to 15 minutes together while I answer these questions. And so let's get started. So I just have a couple of notes here in terms of what I thought would be useful to us all, and just kind of priming the pump in terms of Data Privacy Day and being aware of what small business owners collect. So first and foremost, you as a small business owner or someone who maybe works for a small business, you are collecting data, and you need to have kind of three knows, is like my awareness, KNOWS, three knows. You have to have knowledge of what data you collect. And a lot of small business owners actually don't have an inventory of the data that you collect. Are you collecting financial data? Are you collecting payment data? Are you collecting customer demographics, both online? And that's not just in a cloud service. Is your website collecting data from people? Every time someone fills out a form and gets added to your email list, that's an additional set of databases. So you need to know what data is being collected. You need to know what you collect across all of those various properties that you have online. And so know what you collect online. Know what you collect offline. Are you collecting forms? Are people putting information onto printed contracts and handing those to you, or emailing them to you, and you're printing them and passing them along and throughout the business? I think it's really important from a data privacy perspective to know what kind of information you collect, and then ask the question, why do we collect it? Do you need to have that information about that client in order to be able to effectively provide those services, to effectively market to them, to effectively retain that business from those customers? And if the answer is yes, that's great. Go ahead and keep the data and decide to review what you've collected over some period of time. That takes me to my next no. No number two is you should know what you store. You should know what data you store both online and offline. So for example, you might have a form on your website. It then populates an email database in your email marketing software, and that form is ultimately deleted. Well, that's helpful because you know that the data is not stored on your website. It was ephemeral in the database. And then, of course, you know that you are storing that data in the email database once that information is passed along from your website to your email marketing software. So now you know, okay, we have some of this information. Is this information, again, useful to us to be holding for a long period of time? So you want to make sure, are you collecting the data, and what data are you holding? And is that data being held in a database that you feel is secure? And so then third, I always like to know what your vendors are collecting and storing. So it's your responsibility as the business owner to know what other people are collecting and holding, both about your business and about your customers' data, your customers' information. And so what data are they holding on your behalf, both for yourself, for the business, and for your customers? And that's a very easy thing to do. Just reach out to them and say, hey, by the way, I'd really just like to know what you have on my behalf. I just really like to see where we can choose which data to be kept, which data to get rid of. And that helps to reduce our overall privacy footprint. That is our data footprint, our overall exposure to potential hackers. So to reiterate, that is, know what you collect. And again, this is both online and offline. Know what you collect, know what you store, and know what vendors are collecting and storing. Okay, it's just very basic principles. There are more than that. I'm sure we could get into if people have deeper questions, but those are the three basics. I think that it's really important from a data privacy perspective to understand that your customers do have some level of and right to privacy, whether or not it's legislated by any particular government authority. I think it's the ethical thing that small business owners should do. And eventually we are going to see legislation, especially in the United States, that will start to push that envelope forward. We're seeing that in several states, California being the most aggressive one right now. But we're going to see more data privacy laws that require us to know what you're collecting, know what you're storing, and even some more aggressive means in terms of knowledge. But you should know what you collect, know what you store, and know what your vendors are collecting and storing both online and offline. Okay, so this was basic guidelines. As well, I like to kind of use three different tools in the process of making data transiting across the systems that we use every day private. And it's a really kind of common sense thing for me because I'm steeped in the technology space. But for those of us who are not steeped in the technology space, this can be a little bit cumbersome and potentially a little technical and confusing. So it's important for us to kind of bring it down to a level that we can all understand. And so that's what I want to do here. And I'll wait for questions. If there are no questions, we'll close out the live stream, but I'm happy to answer questions. So ask those questions in the question panel as you have them. So first and foremost, every business and their website should be secure. And this, again, is about not just being hacked, but it's also about being able to siphon off data, to be able to see data that is transiting from people who are visiting your website, who are visiting business websites. If you're a customer and you're going to a website and that website's not secure, then you are, in essence, sharing that data with everyone else who can see your connection to the internet, which is a lot of people. And so what we want to do is want to provide a little bit of education around how to make sure your website's data is both private and secure. And one of the ways in which we can do that is through what's called the HTTPS, or Secure Socket Layer, which allows you to be able to put that little lock icon in your browser, so that when your website loads, the user who visits it is getting two different benefits. They are getting the ability to have your data securely sent between the website and the web server, and then back again. The other side is that you're able to protect some of the data that's being transited along that perspective in terms of privacy, because sometimes there's leakage. The next tool I'm going to talk about helps to create another layer of privacy. But for the most part, we want to make sure that if I type my name, my email address, and potentially any other secure information, that private information about myself, when I submit that through a website, I want to make sure that lock icon is there so that information is not being exposed to anyone who might be kind of sniffing, checking out and lurking at the data that I'm transiting between my browser and your business web server. Okay, and so that's the HTTPS or SSL, and which is the transfer lock, the secure encryption technology that we use in and on services. If you have a particular domain and web host where you're not sure about the way in which you add that certificate, the SSL certificate, you can call them and they will work with you to be able to make that happen. And if they don't, just let me know and we can figure out something to help you fix that, because no good domain registrar or web host should block you from being able to get that security added very quickly and easily. Okay, so that's the number one. You should have that HTTPS for every website that you own. There should be not a single website that says unsecure or connecting to an unsecure service. Now, that also means that you have to have whatever things you have embedded on your website also be HTTPS. So for example, I have a personal website and I embed a Google Calendar on that personal website. Google provides me with that little bit of code, and that is also HTTPS in the link. So when I paste that code into the website, it's giving me a secure link to be able to embed that calendar, as opposed to HTTP, which is the insecure version or the unsecured version of that. So you want to make sure that when you are putting out your websites, you're not just connecting your website through the SSL, the HTTPS secure connection, but you're making sure that any other services that you're tapping into to be able to provide information or functionality to the website for people coming to your website are getting the same level of security. Okay. Next up is, as I said, the secure socket layer, the SSL certificate, and that HTTPS provides for encrypted data being transited from the web browser up to the web server. But the reality is that anyone can view that data. I mean, anyone can see that data, and it's just a primary layer of encryption as it's transiting back and forth between the two of them. So for example, every bit of information that you communicate between your computer and your internet service provider is seen by your internet service provider, your ISP. So the ISP is capable of reading everything that you do on the internet. And that means as a business owner as well, we have to be conscious of our desire to protect and not expose, basically, our desire not to expose our customers' private information, as well as our own business private information. We might be sending intellectual property over email, or intellectual property through other online storage. And you don't want your ISP sniffing around in your private data. And one way we can help to mitigate that is through what we call a VPN, a virtual private network. Now, these are really easy to set up once you understand a couple things about them. One is a VPN is not some, set it and forget it kind of thing, and all of a sudden you're super encrypted and nothing is going to ever be wrong. You still have to use what I call uncommon common sense about how you browse the web and how you use public Wi-Fi access and those kinds of things. But it does provide a really good level of encryption to be able to what we call tunnel. It creates a connection between you, and as it touches the ISP, it creates a separate kind of connection through an intermediary server and then out to the internet and to the web server on the other side. So a VPN creates a virtual private network. It's a private network that you're creating through this particular other server, not through your internet service provider. So the internet service provider is kind of like providing you with the land on which you're walking, and the virtual private network is providing the asphalt or pavement or otherwise that you are then it's a different layer that you're communicating across, that you're walking across, to be able to have another layer of security. And they're very, very helpful. You're not going to find these these are very expensive ones, they're very inexpensive ones. So I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations. One is that there is a protocol called, there's a VPN called OpenVPN, and they actually have their own private service called privatetunnel.com, and I found it to be the least expensive. It's fast, it's useful, and so privatetunnel.com, I think as of right now, it's like $6 per month or $36 per year for 3 computers, and you can of course upgrade and level up the number of computers that you have in the office, and therefore connect all of the devices. That would be inclusive of your mobile phones when they connect through any Wi-Fi. So that's the thing people forget, is that when you're on the cellular network, you're connecting to 4G or ultimately 5G at some point, LTE to 5G and whatnot, you're making a connection through the cellular tower and through whatever gateway is provided to you by the mobile providers. And you want to encrypt that data, and you want to encrypt when you touch your own Wi-Fi or public Wi-Fi access points. So you want to add that application to your mobile clients. I have an iPad here, I want it on my iPad, I want it on my Android phone, I want it on my desktop computer, and that way all of those devices are connected to and through the VPN as opposed to being given to the ISP. I just don't want my ISP looking at my data, and I certainly don't want them looking at my customer information. Okay, so it's about closing that loophole and giving some privacy. So with HTTPS, having the lock icon and a VPN installed inside the business, you're giving a nice set of protections, a combination of protections to be able to transit data back and forth privately with whomever you plan to communicate. And then, of course, last but not least, is the commonly forgotten data privacy risk, which is email. For those of you who don't know, the World Wide Web is one particular strata within the greater ecosystem on top of the internet architecture. And but one big swath of that is email. Email is a part of that web architecture, and email is a place where we transit lots and lots of information. Well, something that you don't really think about is that email is completely public. It's an open protocol. So anyone can access email and anyone can receive email across the planet. And that democratizes communication, and it's very powerful, and it's great that we have it. But we have to be very conscious of the fact that email is being sent in an open protocol, meaning that there's really not very much security around email. It's very easy to intercept email and to subvert email and to pretend to be an email address to others. And so the way in which we can actually help to fix that is through what we call different policy frameworks, basically authentication frameworks, that allow us to tell the person who is receiving our email that we are who we say we are. And so email authentication is a very, very powerful tool. I'm going to give you 3 different frameworks that you need to use in your business, and or if you have, say, your own personal email address at your own domain, like I do. I have rsydneysmith.com, and I have an email address at rsydneysmith.com. I want to make sure that I have these 3 tools added to my DNS, which is your domain name service, for the email services that you're using, so that you are securing your authenticity to the person on the other side, so that when someone sends an email and or receives an email, they know that they're going to get it to the right person and also be received by the right person on either side. This helps to just increase a little bit of that privacy, and the authenticity of that email is very much tied to that in the greater world of stopping email spoofing and spam and all kinds of other things. If everybody just did SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, we would be that much more private and that much more secure. So those are the 3: SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, DMARC. Okay, those are the 3 protocols. If you Google SPF, like the sunscreen, SPF protection, SPF is a sender policy framework, and then DKIM and DMARC. Those 3 solutions all should be implemented on your email services so that you are sending and receiving with the proper policy frameworks in place, the right records in your email services, so that you're able to comfortably send email and know that you're getting email to people effectively, because a lot of servers look for these records, and if they don't see them, then they will potentially flag your email as spam or inauthentic or otherwise, and reduce your deliverability. On the other side, when you're receiving email, they will then be able to identify if it is supposed to be for you, or if it is someone sending an email through some kind of spoofing system, and then be able to block potentially malicious email and other kinds of malware that might infect you anyway. And so I'm going to actually type this into the chat here, just so that you're all aware of the acronyms, because they are difficult, but it's SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And so if you just type those 3 into Google, you'll find all kinds of information about the 3 different policy frameworks, the 3 different email authentication frameworks, and you'll then be able to talk to your employer, especially if your employer doesn't have these. You want them to make sure they have them, make sure IT or whoever the technology consultant is handling website and email, make sure those are implemented. If you were using G Suite, for example, I'm the Google Small Business Advisor for productivity. And so in G Suite, those are automatically enabled when you use Gmail for Business within the G Suite platform. And that is also, I believe, the same thing for Microsoft Office 365, but you should verify that those 3 different certificate policies are set up by default on your system. All right, so I've talked quite a bit. I do not see any other questions in the question panel. I hope this was useful to you all in terms of learning a little bit more about data privacy and what you can do in a small business in terms of considering the various types of data privacy. Knowing what you collect, knowing what you're storing, and knowing what your vendors are collecting and storing, I think is a key piece of making sure that you're keeping both your business data and your customers' business data private. And so with that, thank you all. I hope you all have a great Data Privacy Day 2020. Like I said, over in the over on YouTube somewhere, you can type in Data Privacy Day 2020, and there is a live stream happening out in San Francisco. I think it's just starting now, where there's a bunch of panel discussions that are being hosted by the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And so go check those out, see all the great information that they're talking about cybersecurity and data privacy and protection and so on and so forth. And again, I'm Ray Sidney Smith with W3 Consulting and W3C Web Services, and take care.